Java as a programming language is developed to give you, as the programmer, as much control as possible and to give you the flexibility to design any program that you can imagine. In order to be able to do that, you're going to eventually begin to write your own methods that your objects can use. That means that whenever you have code that you want to reuse, you're going to be able to encapsulate it inside of its own method so that you can reuse it later. In order to do that, in this lesson, we're going to go over all the different defining characteristics of a method. A few examples of that are whether the method returns a value, meaning we call it a non-void method, or if it's just a method that we call for its side effects and it doesn't actually return a value. We call that a void method. Another example that helps us define a method is whether or not we want to overload that method. Right? Remember when we talked about constructors, we talked about how you can write multiple constructors for one object? Well, you can also write multiple methods that have the same name. One example of that might be like, let's say you were writing a method that wanted to find the maximum number, and you wanted to be able to either pass in 2 numbers, 3 numbers, or a list of 100 numbers. You could write 3 different methods, call each of them maximum, and they would each take a different set of inputs, and therefore Java would call those overloaded methods. So again, Java gives you lots of flexibility to write your own methods. That way you can design any program that you can imagine once you understand how different methods are defined.
In the last lesson, we learned about how to create our own objects by calling the constructor for a given class. Right? If you notice this line here, circle C equals new circle. This is what we talked about in the last lesson, where you are creating a new circle. This is the constructor, and then the object here is C, and C is an object of the type circle. So today, we're going to be looking at how we can actually use the methods, or the behaviors or actions that are associated with this particular class. Now you may remember that earlier in this unit, you learned a bunch of the methods that come with the string class. And that was sort of a precursor to this lesson, where you're now going to be learning a bit more about the different types of methods and how you might see them in a custom class like a circle. So the first example that I wanted to show you is the setRadius method. All right. I imagine most of you are familiar with the circle, right? You've seen your math teacher draw them on the board or attempt to draw them on the board. They're round, they have a radius, a diameter, a circumference. Pi is in the area formula. All of those things are going to be true of this circle class that we've written in Java. And so one of the methods that we can use on it is to set the radius. So this will actually update the radius of the circle and set it to 10. Now, you may be wondering, okay, I wonder what other methods are also available in the circle class. Well, remember when we talked about constructors? We were able to go and look at the documentation, right? The API of the shapes package, and that was a place where we could find out more information about what was available to us for each class. The same thing is true for methods. So now I want to go together and look at the API to see how setRadius works, and then also to look at any other methods that might be in the circle class. Here's our shapes API, and this is the class circle. So remember last time we talked about the constructors, and then if we scroll down, we can actually see a summary of all the methods that come with a circle. So that when we create a circle, if we use that dot operator, we can call any of these methods. So the one that I showed you a minute ago was setRadius. You see that setRadius is here, and in the parentheses, we're going to be passing in a parameter that is a double, and that double is going to set the radius of the circle to the specified radius. So this is the specified radius. It's going to set the radius of this circle. And you'll see some other methods we have here are getArea, getCircumference, getRadius, toString, which actually allows us to print out the circle, and then equals, which allows us to compare this circle to another object. Now, if you scroll down even further, you can find more details about these methods, but you'll notice that we don't actually see the code that is written in setRadius. Now, eventually you are going to be designing your own methods, but for now, we just want to practice being able to read these details, these documentation, and then applying the methods that we learn. So now let's try applying this together in a coding practice. let's review these lines of code together. You have circle C being set equal to a new circle. Remember, we're calling the constructor here, and this is our circle object called C. And then we're going to call the method setRadius by using the dot operator, right? So C.setRadius, and then we're passing in 10.0 to set the radius of our circle to 10.0. And then we're going to print out the circle just to see that our changes have taken effect. Okay, so we try running this code, and we do in fact get a printout that says circle with radius 10.0. Okay, so now I want you to try something. Let's try commenting out this code so that instead of setting the radius to 10.0, we're just going to create the circle and then print it out. So if we now try this, you'll see that we get circle with radius 1.0. This is because when you construct a circle with no parameters, the default radius is 1.0. And only by calling the setRadius method can we actually update that value. Okay, so now I want you to go ahead and try playing around with this yourself. Feel free to go look at the documentation and try some of the other methods. And then when you come back, we're going to look at some of the other shapes that you have in the shapes package.